Hello, everyone. This is Lee Andrews with Akathame on another Live with Lee. Thank you all for those who are joining us live, and thank you for those who are watching after the live broadcast. All of your comments can be shared on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So just put your comments and questions in there, and our panelists will see everything, and we'll try to get to everybody's questions and comments as we go along. Typically, these last about 30 minutes. This one might take a little longer. It might be right on time. So just keep those comments coming. And if our panelists are unable to respond to your questions or comments during this time, I'm sure they'll be happy to follow up with you later. All right, so let's go through. First of all, for those of you who aren't familiar with akathame, akathame is an international talent acquisition and management consulting firm. If you are interested in representation or if you are interested in working with superior talent, we can help you do that. So let's get right to the meat of this conversation. So we're going to start with Caroline, then we're going to go to John and Melissa. Today's up, and we just lost Caroline. So
we lost her to a dog.
John and Melissa to introduce themselves very quickly. But today's topic is going to be on ghosting. What's happening with ghosting? Why is it happening? How do we get through this? And how can we potentially improve the situation and the impact? What's happening as we go through this horrible time of trying to find a job and getting ghosted? So, John, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I describe myself as sort of a dual person. My day job is VP of Analytics and Research for the NYC Tourism Board. But most people on LinkedIn know me as the guy who kind of writes authentic content about what it means to have a career and job. And I focus specifically on young professionals.
Oh, Lee, you're on mute.
Looks like we just got joined by Monica, who is straightening out her screen. This is live, people. So, you know what happens with live. It's live. Melissa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Melissa Doman. I'm an organizational psychologist and former clinical mental health therapist, and I specialize in mental health at work. So teaching companies and leaders and individuals how and why to talk about it. And I'm absolutely obsessed with the purpose of what I'm doing and working fully virtually and working on a book. So that's just a little bit about me.
That's awesome. And you're going to help us understand how we should be processing this ghosting thing.
All the cool, dorky psychological stuff that I love talking about that will hopefully lend itself to being useful.
Great. All right. Caroline, welcome back. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, that's quite an entrance, right? Like exits, my entrance. Wow.
Drama.
I have no idea what happened. So I'm Caroline Vernon, and I'm the director of sales at a company called Into USA, which is formerly Career Arc. We concentrate our efforts on job seekers. People who have been involuntarily released from their organizations as a outplacement support. I've coached personally over 3,300 people. So I consider myself an advocate of job seekers, but I've also been ghosted in my past. Hence the reason I'm here with you today.
Thank you, Caroline. Monica, you're situated, right?
Hopefully. There's a lot of chatter, and I think it's because of my bandwidth issues, so I apologize, you guys. I'm not in Chicago anymore. I'm in a rural town in Northwest Illinois coming to you guys live, and it is challenging out here for activity, even though we've got arrows, throughout the entire house to make the Wi-Fi, higher bandwidth. But anyways.
So, Monica, could you introduce yourself to us very, very briefly, and then we'll get right into stories.
Yep. So I'm in the creative marketing digital staffing world, most formally with 24/7 on the biz dev and the recruitment front, and I was displaced by the pandemic in May.
I am sorry to hear that. So all of us, everybody who's on this call right now, who is actually actively looking for work, So everybody, whether you are in sales, whether you are looking to find a job, or looking to hire in any one of those capacities, are you looking to engage with new clients, new hiring managers? Because they're both the same, right? If you're doing sales, sorry about that, guys. So if you're doing sales, do you ever get ghosted as a salesperson?
Oh, yes.
I mean, I'm working for myself, and I get ghosted from new leads all the time as well.
Of course. So it happens ghosting. Let's go ahead and define what ghosting is before we go any further. Ghosting in this particular case means that you have been actively engaged with a hiring manager. And if you are looking for work as a contractor, it's no different than getting ghosted by a sales target, right? Your targeted audience. It means that you have had a certain degree of interaction and then all of a sudden nothing.
Yeah.
And that ghosting usually happens after 2 to 3 engagements and then nothing. So I really want to start with, John, you were the first person who sent me a story that just made my blood boil. What happened in your situation?
Oh, yeah. So actually, I had a post that went pretty viral last week on LinkedIn about my particular ghosting story. So it was exactly what Lee had said. I'd met with the company about 3 times, and it was actually around this time of year. So you expect a little bit less ghosting to happen, holiday spirit or something. And I had met, and, I just really got along great with the hiring manager, just like was such in a good mood, right? There's always this mood thing that happens before you get ghosted where you're like, oh my God, I feel so great about this company and they really like me and I feel accepted, right? And you're like, oh, this is going to work out so well. And you're talking like you're working there, right? And so all of that was happening. I went in for a second interview and I was like, this is really great. I love this company. I love what I'm going to do for them. And I leave. And, I had mentioned something like they're saying, oh, when are you going to start? And, the HR person or the recruiter follows up and says, hey, just waiting to get final say, so happy to almost have you. And then what I think what had caught a lot of people is that the reason I found out that I was ghosted, and this has probably happened to some of you guys on the phone, is I'm like, 2 weeks later, I don't hear from them. Obviously, I'm like, okay, that's weird. I really wanted to work here. And I find out a colleague of mine who has a similar type of job as I do got the job and started as, whatever the job was called. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, that's interesting. So they said they were going to hire me, but they were clearly still interviewing. And, just to end this story and something that, everybody here can say, the reason this is so detrimental is I never forgot what that company did for me. And if I'm going to work somewhere else and, and have to deal with them as a client, I'm not going to forget that experience. It's interesting, this idea of human dignity and, this idea of actions happening to us, you don't forget these things, right? This happened to me, I want to say 6-7 years ago, but I'm recalling this like traumatic incident like it was yesterday, right? And this company, like I remember the name, I remember the people who did this, right? So that's really my story, but I think that same story has happened to me as a job seeker about 6 or 7 times. This is not unique.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
All right.
Oh, gosh.
Thanks for the care, guys. But it's true. It does. It happens more and more and more. And it's very common.
Yeah.
And you start to build up these defenses. You're like, it's going to keep happening.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that because I think that your point on how you view those companies and those people is really where the key lies. Caroline, what about you? Yours was the next story that just was nails on a chalkboard.
So, so this was several years back prior to joining the organization that I'm currently with, but it was a leadership type of role. And it was, I was on my 8th and last interview. It was an accumulative of 12 hours-ish with some drive time. The company focus, their business model was on the world of work and engagement and things that, happen in the world of work. So happiness, employee experience, that was their focus. And I got to the last interview with the CEO herself. And she said, expect an offer also this time of year. So I was also on the same kind of wavelength that you were on, Jonathan, like, oh, this is so great. As of the first of the year, I'm going to join with this amazing company, and they have such a good mission, and I really have this shared mission with them, and everything was pointing in that direction, including the words, you should expect an offer in your inbox. And that offer never hit my inbox. So that followed up with several emails to every single person that I have spent time with, just checking in. What happened? Is there something that happened, including the recruiter that, by the way, recruited me to this position? And so then about a year later, that same recruiter reached out to me and asked me if I knew anybody in my network that would be a good fit for that role. A year later. So it was something, of course, I neglected to answer, just because I just didn't feel like it was in my best interest with my own personal brand to reply with what I felt like I really wanted to reply. So yes, it was
Did you not respond, Caroline?
I chose silence.
You chose silence.
I did.
I would have chose non-silence and picked a different language. So.
Believe me, there was a lot of thought and a lot of anguish, because I felt like it was my opportunity to get to lash out because I had gone through a series of emotions, obviously, like everybody, that, I had felt like I wasn't worthy, that there was something wrong with me, that I felt like I had imposter syndrome, that maybe I don't know what I know. Maybe I am not as, as good enough to work there, all of those emotions. And then it was anger and everything else that, comes with the stages of grief. And then to have him reach out and ask me if I knew anybody in my network that would make a good fit for that role, which, by the way, they never hired for. So yes, it was a good thing though, because I did find out they had a significant layoff that impacted over half of their workforce. So it was a good thing for me not to join.
I was just going to say, sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Monica. So Monica.
Okay, how much time do I have? 5 minutes or 2?
Monica is a recruiter who's talking to recruiters and hiring managers, who's getting ghosted by recruiters and hiring managers. How's that?
Breaking the fourth wall, Monica.
Jeez.
Breaking the fourth wall. What?
Yeah. Recruiters ghosting recruiters. It's like, like eating your own.
So I get.
Talk to us, Monica.
So again, I'm not looking for pity here. This is just straight facts. And I will tell you, my heart has been going out to all of you guys that are sharing these stories, but also the thousands of people on LinkedIn that have gone through way worse than I have. So again, I feel blessed that this is kind of what I've experienced. So one story has happened really quickly. A VP of Global Talent for a very well-known, very, very top-notch global marketing advertising agency reached out to me and said, hey, you look like a perfect fit for our contract recruiter role. Are you on the market? And I said, absolutely, I'm interested. And then she retorted back, oh, I think you're overqualified. Maybe let's not waste the call. And I said, albeit maybe I'm overqualified, but you guys are on my top 5 list. I'd love to chat with you and get a foot in the door, right? So I said, okay, let's go ahead and schedule that. When are you available? Thursday, 1 or 2 o'clock. I only hesitated by 3 minutes and responded. And I said, Mary Lynn, I'm excited. I'm humbled, and I cannot wait for, to connect with you live. And mind you, this was a Tuesday. And I said, looking forward to the calendar invite for 1 or 2 o'clock. I will keep my calendar open. Nothing happened, whatever, went about my day, prospecting, connecting. Nothing happened Wednesday. Wednesday rolls around 4 p.m. I send in a note on LinkedIn and in the email, and I said, hey, just kindly bubbling this up here. I know you're crazy busy. You have a lot on your plate, hence why you need some extra hands. I am still very interested and excited. Looking forward to the link for Thursday at 1 or 2 p.m. Central. Nothing, right? Thursday rolls around. I saw that she saw my chat on LinkedIn because that's how she initially started the conversation. So I know she's seen it. Nothing. I liked 1 or 2 of her posts. I don't think I commented, but I liked, how that goes, right? Liked 1 or 2 of her posts on LinkedIn. Just kind of be like, okay, what's going on? Thursday rolls around. Nothing. Friday, nothing. So at this point, do I say anything else? Do I look like a psycho? I'm thinking I'm not going to say anything else. So that's one story. Okay, second story is a little worse. So this really fantastic, if you guys are from Chicago or know some of the top tech companies in Chicago, they're an up-and-coming company, been around for 7 years. Long story short, they've had massive growth. So when the VP of talent, a woman, by the way, reaches out to me a few weeks ago, says, I'm really impressed by your background. You look like a great fit for us. Are you on market? Are you interested? And the position turned into a full-time role because at first it was contract. So I was elated. I had my initial interview with her. It was fantastic. She was organized, on time. She followed up with me. She even emailed me on the weekend, on a Sunday night saying, hey, here's some more details. I mean, she was great. So I was like, okay, this is feeling good, right? Then she said, okay, we're interviewing at least 15 other people. We've had significant response on LinkedIn. We're trying to make a decision for first week start of December. I said, okay, perfect. And she said that the next 2 rounds, I have to connect you with my director of recruiting in Arun. Long story short, I connected with him over a year and a half ago, trying to sell their company to actually have them become my client when I was at 24/7. So I had a good rapport with him. A phone call a long time ago. They weren't at a growth stage yet to bring on an external recruiting firm. They still aren't. So I was excited. I said, yeah, I know Arun. I'm excited, whatever. Email goes off within, no hesitation from Heather. He responds fairly quickly within about an hour, says, I'm excited to chat with you. Let's set something up. He gives me availability. I give availability. We get it on the calendar. Okay. The day rolls around. Nothing. I get a text from him. Literally 1 minute to the interview. I gotta cancel. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, okay, no worries. Things come up, right? He's super busy. They have, 50 some recs they're working on right now between the 2 of them. So I said, no problem. Right. This goes on for about 8 or 9 different iterations, you guys, throughout a couple days. This is like different emails, different whatnot, text, whatever. And one time I'm available, but only because, I make an exception. And then he cancels. Oh, I got to pick my daughter up. I'm so sorry. I thought I had more time. So I'm at this point, like, should I give up on this company? Right? This is ludicrous. So I end up circling back on a Monday morning, putting his boss back on the chain. Obviously, he had taken her off after rescheduling twice and then to reschedule more and more times. And she responded, I am so sorry. Things have gotten really crazy. And he apologized as well and then asked for my times again. And I thought, okay, we're going to be fine. Nope. Doesn't solidify the time or date. Once again, nothing happens. And now I'm back in limbo. So that is my mini second story. What do you do?
Want to remind everybody. I just want to remind everybody who's just now joining us. Lorelai's. I mean, there's lots of people who are saying been there, done this, and we're getting that feedback. So I want you to realize that it's not just you. That this is happening. That you're talking about a senior level recruiter who's talking to the head of talent acquisition for a company, and the hiring manager and other recruiters are ghosting their own in their own profession. So to me, that tells me that we've got a systemic problem, right? There is a systemic problem that's happening here. And if we don't fix this, what's going to happen is people in their individual brands and the company brands are going to start to be affected. And for that, I want to go back to Melissa. And Melissa had a story of ghosting. And then I want to talk about the impact. So Melissa, if you could just quickly tell us your story, and then we'll get into what people can do to prevent this from happening as well.
Yeah, no worries. So I've experienced ghosting prior to becoming a clinician. You know, I worked in the corporate world. And then even when I got my master's degree, got licensed, you still have to apply for jobs to work as a therapist in different settings. And now I work for myself. And so in all three of those stages, I've experienced ghosting. And prior, you know, even training or not, I'm still human and it's deeply painful. And we'll go into some of the impacts shortly, but it starts to make you challenge your self-concept, your value, your worth, if you said something wrong and all those sorts of things. And what I found to be most infuriating is when I encountered ghosting when I was applying for therapeutic positions to other therapists who know what it's like on the brain and on the personality when you encounter ambiguity and uncertainty, which is really uncomfortable for most people, particularly when you're applying for jobs that have a big portion to do with your identity. And so often I got better at this over the years, but when I did get ghosted, I'm talking like several interviews, several emails, oh, you're such a good fit, and really just falling off the map. I got very good at speaking up for myself and saying, I really don't appreciate the lack of consideration and the lack of professionalism given that, you know, XYZ. If you do not want to proceed further, please tell me. And I'm very happy to cease this relationship. And,
so you did more what I would have done in Caroline's shoes. Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah. Teachable moments.
Yeah. So you're looking at it as a teachable moment, but most people like Caroline, I think, would just ignore that. Just ignore that outreach and say, you know, because that's the biggest challenge that we have as human beings, is that not getting that feedback is more devastating to us.
Oh, yeah.
Than getting it. And yet most people will not engage at that level because they're so angry, I think. They're so, right, Caroline? Because you mentioned that level of anger.
Absolutely. And the funny thing about it was I coached all those thousands of people to do exactly the opposite of what
your own
I was
advice.
doing. Exactly. It's like you tell them that you don't appreciate this lack of professionalism, but yet me on the side, it's like, and I'm a salesperson. I have that. I have hard conversations all day long, but it's just,
that's really what it is I think people struggle with hard conversations, with conflict, with drawing boundaries, and people getting difficult feedback within the context of any relationship can be hard for a lot of people. And unfortunately, it's not a skill set that, you know, no matter what age you are, that everybody learns. And it's really a rampant issue within the professional world. And there's almost this mindset of, this person doesn't work here, we don't owe them anything.
Yeah.
That's so damaging to people. And that's not even thinking about like the liability things that people are concerned about. Oh, you don't want to say the wrong thing in the turn down email because people are so litigious. That's another thing to think about. But there are ways to properly navigate that while still being just a decent human being.
I have a question for you guys. How much of this is a power dynamic thing? Because I'm really curious about that, right? Is it that on the side of the job holder, they think, well, we have all of the cards here and they have nothing and we don't owe them anything, to the point that you made. And so they sort of see this as a power thing where it's like, well, we don't owe them anything. They're just another job seeker, right? They're not a human being. And because they have the job that person wants. I'm just curious how much that plays into it.
I think that's part of it. I think that there is a bit of in the ivory tower, as it were, where it's like, it's almost like the, I don't know if you guys have seen like Meet the Fockers, but it's like the circle of trust sort of thing, that they hold the power, they hold the circle of trust. And this person they don't know, who hasn't proven themselves, they aren't deserving of said power or said being inside the circle. And some of them don't even do it consciously. It's unconsciously. That doesn't make it better, but some people, they don't even realize they're doing it.
It's
Yeah.
Lucy and the Charlie Brown with the football, right? Like,
Mm.
here's the football, kick the football, and I'm
Here,
going to
you
pull the
have it, but
football.
you don't.
What do you think about that, Monica? What do you think about that, Monica? Because you've been on both sides of that coin a lot.
I mean, to be honest, I still think there's no excuse. I mean, okay, if you need help, clearly you need help. You guys have issues. I mean, I don't know. I just think there's no excuse. And if you're truly an empathetic recruiter and you're an empathetic HR and talent acquisition person, then, you wouldn't do that to another individual. Also, in my opinion, and you're not a visionary and a forward thinker, because people talk and some people have big networks and you might underestimate that individual.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
yes, because different staffing firms have gotten terrible names because of just, silly mistakes that maybe, green recruiters or green sales reps have made. Also, organizations, think about different things that have happened with big global organizations because of mistreatment of individuals. So I don't know. I think there's no excuses and it's laziness. It's just lazy.
Adding to Monica's point and also to John's point, I think it's the lack of insight, but it's also the lack of awareness of, obviously I'm biased, the mental health impact that has on people. That's not something that maybe recruiters or in talent, when it can be transactional, that you don't know what you don't know. And you're not going to be thinking about that unless someone takes the blinder off and they're like, hey, have you also thought about this? They're not thinking of, oh, my ignoring this person might make them feel, depressed for a few days. They're not thinking of that. So it's trying to slow the process down slightly and have people remember intention versus impact. Most adults don't think about that because they don't care or they don't think to. Yeah. And so there's almost like, I don't want to call it a duty of care because that person doesn't work for the organization, but there's really there has to be some form of, I don't know if care is the word, that goes into the process.
Care is
the idea. I think it's the idea of theory of mind, right? Like you're not actually putting yourself into the mindset of the other person on the other side. It's like, it's not, there's a lack of like a certain segment of emotional intelligence by doing it, right? To not realize that you can be affecting someone like this. And, here's another interesting point. I know that to bring up, but like, has the person doing the ghosting ever been ghosted before? Like, would they then do it if they had? Because I, as a hiring manager, literally, and that's what I am right now. You had asked initially who's a hiring manager. I'm a hiring manager, and anyone who has interviewed with me gets a personalized message from me and an offer to help, because I know what that person's going through and I know what it meant, and I just feel so much for them. Not to say I'm such a great person, but it's more that I've been through this process, so I really understand what's happening to them.
But you also have more empathy as a person, and you have more emotional intelligence as a person. And not everybody is on that same sort of level. So a lot of those practices that you see people doing, I don't think the personal and professional self for some folks are so different. A lot of it is the same.
They're not.
And so like there are people who have gone through this ghosting over and over and over again that actually you could argue they get legitimately traumatized. They have all of the signs and symptoms of being traumatized. For being unemployed for God knows how long, for being ghosted over and over again. And so the empathy and care that you show, and like hats off to you for doing that. We need more people doing that. Some people are just not like that as people. So they wouldn't do it.
So I'm now sitting here with my arms crossed, seething even more than I was when I started this call. So, and yes, John, thank you so much for being human and humane. As Caroline and I know Monica are on these things. And Melissa, thanks for sharing those insights. I'm going to turn the tables for a second. Hiring manager gets ghosted by candidates. Recruiters get ghosted by candidates. What do we think about that?
Angers me to no end. And I've written about it on LinkedIn. And you're seeing the anger happen to me. It is an awful feeling and it cannot happen. And I have a huge platform where I call them out. So
good.
Don't do it to me. But it is absolutely disrespectful of me and the time that I have put in. I'm sorry, I'm just weighing in real fast. I have zero tolerance for it because as people were saying, I'm a human being with empathy, and that's not showing me any respect.
Yeah.
whichever direction it is in,
Mhm.
whether it's candidate or recruiter or hiring manager, whichever direction
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
it's still disrespectful. No matter what who's doing the ghosting, it's still a very disrespectful way to hide from something that you obviously aren't interested in pursuing any further. And it's basically a lack of courage that I think
That's arrogance. Caroline, I think it's arrogance. I think that some.
I think
think
it's
it's
all of
arrogant.
them. All of
I
them.
think it's arrogant.
Courage, arrogance, lack of respect.
Yeah.
It's also
Oh.
perpetuating the cycle, because imagine if the candidates are doing it, and let's say that the recruiter or talent management person, let's say they don't have a history of ghosting, but let's say that the candidates keep doing it and doing it and doing it, resentment will build. And so if they go, well, if they're not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And so resentment is very poisonous. And so I just keep going back to people. Oh my God, I meet people who 10, 20, 30, 40 years my senior, who are just so uncomfortable with difficult conversations. They would rather be in the casket than give the eulogy. Like they're just they're so uncomfortable because they've made up these scenarios in their mind of what's going to happen that are just not based in reality. They're based on previous experiences or fears or whatever it is. But regardless of whichever direction it is, there are ripple effects that come from that. And job seekers, depending on their motivation of why they're seeking a job in that moment, that is the last thing they're thinking about.
Right.
So let's get to some solution talking here. So I believe that this is systemic. I believe that it's part of a company's culture. As a leader of talent management, talent acquisition, we either, as a CEO, we either instill in every employee in the organization that communication is the epitome of who we are. That touch point is our brand, and it should be our company brand and your personal brand. If we cannot live up to that, you don't belong in the company. That, I think, that's just a very simple solution. Monica, you and I have both been in the staffing industry for quite a long time. So I'm going to be curious specifically to get your feedback on this. When I present candidates to a client, or when I present clients, an opportunity to a client or a talent, I ask them this question: on a scale of 0 to 10, what's your sense of urgency to fill the job or get the job?
Absolutely.
0 to 6 means that there's no sense of urgency. 7 to 8, I know that they're on the fence, so I'm going to probably get ghosted, or it's going to be 6 months before we fill it. And then 9 and 10 means that there is an impact to their business, that if this position does not get filled, that there is a cost to them. Those are the ones that I focus my time on: candidates and hiring managers. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's
you absolutely have to have a ranking system.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, just that you absolutely have to have some type of metric in place to set expectations up front. Otherwise, everybody's time is going to be wasted.
Yeah. Adding on that to what you said, Monica, and what you said, Lee, it's almost, again, I'm bringing my clinical mind. It's almost like assessing stages of change, readiness for change. You can save yourself huge amount of headache to ask those questions up front, like you are, Lee. I mean, just assessing motivation and readiness is more than half the battle.
What do you think about that, John, as a hiring manager?
Yeah, no, actually, this is more for the side business that I run, which is this idea of urgency of a problem, right? So, a lot of inbox mails comes to me, and I do career coaching, and they say, I have this problem, right? And I'm sure you all have had this, right? And they're like, solve my problem.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm just like all of you, and I'm exactly like this. And I'm like, okay, so tell me what the problem is. I don't bring up price yet. And then they go in and I say, okay, so you want personalized career attention. That's a paid service I offer. Is that something you're interested in? And guess what, Lee? I get 0 ghosting, because they either get back to me and they don't say anything, and I know that it's no, or they say, you know what, I am interested in that. Let's have that conversation. So being blunt and direct and saying, I am daring you to say no to the thing that you want.
I love that.
That's what works for me. And I don't take offense to anything. If you say no, it means that I'm waiting for a yes from the urgents, the 9, the 10, the I really want what you were selling, John, right? To the, well, I don't know. I don't have time for the I don't know, right? So you just, there's a sense, and as the hiring manager, it's the same thing. Like, do you really want this, right? Are you really interested in this position? Be upfront with me right now. And it is this direct conversation.
If a candidate were to say to you, or to ask you, John, on a scale of 0 to 10, what's your sense of urgency in filling this position? Would that be
my sense of urgency is always 10. I'm not going to put a position up.
You're like the perfect hiring manager, though, John. That's like not 95% of the hiring managers out there and how they think.
Well, I'm just speaking about myself. I mean, if I'm putting a position up, I need it.
You're a dream hiring manager.
What do you think about that, Caroline?
I mean, yeah.
If it's a legitimate opening, if the job opening is actually legitimate, which we all know is not always the case, the sense of urgency has got to be a 10. It's just like the sales process, getting buy-in for the next step. I mean, you have to get that commitment from a candidate, from a recruiter. You have to get that commitment, or
you would be surprised how many hiring managers are out there shopping around. And that's all they're doing is shopping around. And they've got the job posting up.
Terrible.
That is a huge waste of in-house resource and external resource. Okay, here's another one. Oh boy, that one went over pretty well. Let's try this one. How do you feel about a candidate who asks a recruiter or a hiring manager, hey, so how do you feel about ghosting?
Wow.
Wait,
I
you're
love that.
Empowering candidates to ask a hiring manager this, or what?
Yeah. What if
I love that.
What if the candidate were to ask the recruiter or the hiring manager, so hey, how do you feel about ghosting?
When would you ask that, though, in the
brilliant.
process? It's brilliant, but when would you?
On the very first, so say, for example, they go through that first call and the recruiter says, I'm going to get back to you. What if the candidate says, so tell me, before you do that, how do you really feel about ghosting?
Oh, I love that.
I love it.
I love that.
I'm comfortable saying that to a recruiter, though, but what if that is an in-house talent acquisition person that's like, be your boss?
It doesn't make any difference. Doesn't matter. You're getting ghosted by the head of talent acquisition, Monica. You're getting ghosted by he's a talent acquisition.
I think that shows that the person is really mindful about personal accountability.
Yeah.
And impact, and that they value communication. It talks about I hate calling them soft skills, but that's the term that's used. It shows those soft skills just even by asking the question.
Yeah. Great. I love it. I'll try it in the next one.
What do you think, Caroline?
I like it. I think it's bold. But you could tell by the response and the intensity of their response whether or not, I think if a recruiter says something like, well, you have to take each situation as a unique, you can pretty much count on the fact that you're going to get ghosted by that recruiter. I can just hear some of that, some of the recruiters that I've dealt with in the past, not all, some, a very small portion. I've been a recruiter too. So, I mean, I focused on communication as the key and part of my foundation. But if you get a response like, well, every unique situation, that's I guess I like the question. I like it. I think it's bold.
Let's go with the next one. So now I want to talk about a specific scenario. You've gone on 2 interviews. You're going into your 3rd interview, and as a candidate, you want to prevent that ghosting from happening, which happened to all of us, right? Well, actually, it's not happened to me except for once. I only had one ghosting, and that was a full-time hire, and she ghosted me. Hired her for a full-time position. This was a salesperson in the high-tech software area, and they talk about arrogance. There is a very high degree of arrogance in that field.
Yeah.
And she told me she came back later to ask for a job. What do you think I said?
I hope something not involving the F word.
Yeah, right?
I was very specific and say, I only work with people who uphold their end of the bargain.
That's right.
Oh, nicely
I
done.
love that.
That's
She
brilliant.
signed an offer letter.
What?
She signed an offer letter was signed.
Ooh.
So let's do this. So that's somebody whose motivations were all about money. And that would have been fine had she said, I'm looking at other opportunities that are offering more income. And sure, go take it, go do it. Good luck, God bless. I'm with you all the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this question at the end of a second interview, the candidate asks, where do I stand in the hiring process? And they say to John sitting in front of them, expect an offer letter. Caroline, expect an offer letter. What if you were to ask, even after they said that, what if anything could change that outcome? Is there anything that could come up that would change that outcome? So what I'm trying to teach candidates to do is to do what we would call assessing the implication. What if?
Worst case scenario. Yeah.
Assessing the implication. Nothing is closed until it's closed.
And right now, anything can happen, as we all have, can attest to. Anything can happen in the world of work right now. So that's a great. I love that.
Also,
Really
the thing is, though, Lee, like and this speaks to the psychological mindset. I feel like it's better for the candidate to think that to themselves. Right? To have this mindset that, like, I haven't gotten a contract. You said I'm going to, but I'm going to put myself into a situation where I feel like no matter what, I don't have a job until the contract is sent. And so it's training them as well to kind of be like, you know what? There's rejection until there isn't.
Yeah. And building on that point, I think it's really about accurately level setting expectations, because there is a difference between, I would say, cautious optimism versus putting all of your hope in one basket when they haven't given you that reason to do so in writing. Because a lot of where people get in trouble is assumptions and misalignment of expectations. So these sorts of questions that Lee is positing help to ameliorate those in an ideal situation, because a lot of misunderstandings, not only in the workplace, but in life, come from a difference in expectations and different sets of assumptions.
That's right.
That's
right.
Yep.
Monica, what do you think? As she takes this
I mean, not to just say yes to everything, but truly that's kind of what at least I was taught, in the sales and the recruitment world too. Essentially, you go for that no, you go for that final close, so you can see if there's any other hiccups. We've had people go on like a 6-week vacation, a CEO. Oh yeah, you know what? That actually could affect the onboarding date, the start date, the offer, etc. Right? So you always ask. I know it's hard and people cringe because they want that yes so bad. They want to hit their commission, they want to hit their quota. But we were just trained to really ask those hard questions, and at least you're gonna know, right? So I think that's brilliant to empower candidates to now be asking these internal hiring managers these questions as well. I think that's great. Like, to not be afraid.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Caroline?
Our job as a candidate, if you are a candidate, our job is to foresee any roadblocks, just like it is in the sales process. There's a lot of things that could happen between, yes, we've decided to go with you, and here's even a background check could come back, not as positively as they had hoped. So there's a lot of still yet to be done.
Ambiguity. And Lee, I just want to compliment you and Caroline 100% with you on that. Thank you for sharing these questions. These what do you even call them? These just
I use it
Good
as
point.
yeah.
What'd you say?
I coach candidates on this, on how to present,
Okay.
how to get through that hiring process to get to that real yes in the offer letter and get started.
I was just commenting that it's even more pivotal now because of the pandemic, because we don't have that tangible, interpersonal, in-person experience that, in my opinion, candidates like I'm sure all of you guys that are here today on this broadcast live have been able to overcome those hurdles because of your presence, your personality, your wit, just everything. And that unfortunately a lot of people probably maybe wouldn't have been able to overcome, pre-pandemic regardless. But these questions, Lee, are just amazing. So thank you.
Yes, they are.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think that, can I just wrap things up here and kind of summarize saying that if people are ghosted, Melissa, what should they think in their minds first?
This is very, very difficult, but remember that ghosting a lot of the time is about that person's own junk and not you. Try to reasonably depersonalize from that person's lack of action, because odds are they are thinking of 18 other things other than how it's impacting you. So try to depersonalize when you can, and follow up and set the boundary about the impact that they're having, because people need to know. It doesn't mean use every single expletive in the English language, although you might feel good, you might burn that bridge, but seize the teachable moment when you can, because that person may not have gotten that before, and everybody needs to have their come to Jesus moment. So depersonalize, do the teachable moment.
John, from a hiring manager's perspective, if, for example, we learned that if a candidate is not getting back from a recruiter, how would you feel if they went around that process and to you to say, I've been trying so very hard to get seen and heard by a recruiter, and I'm not, and I really want to get a no from you? What would you think about that?
I've literally never worked with a recruiter, so I don't know how to answer the question. I act when I do hiring. Oh, sorry, Monica and Lee, you guys think I'm crazy. I do everything myself.
Wait, I was late to the broadcast, so I apologize. I've been trying to figure out your niche and your industry the entire time. So
who am I? Who's this guy? What is this? No, so I hire for analytics roles on my team, but I literally act as the internal recruiter and the hiring manager. So I don't know how to answer how to deal with a recruiter and all of that. Sorry.
Got it.
It's
Caroline, same question to you.
So what if I had heard that a candidate has been ghosted by one of
your own? Yes,
one of our own. That would be a very awkward, considering one of the things that we sell is candidate care and how to treat the candidate. We, not only the consulting piece, but the actual help with the transition that, job seekers are going through right now. So that would be extremely odd and very unfortunate, because it would equate to a very difficult conversation, because we all have a shared mission, and that is, you use the perfect word, which is care of the candidate and making sure their experience is positive and memorable. So it would
be okay if they reached out to you. Would that be okay if they reached out to you? If the candidate reached out to you, at least told somebody?
It would be okay. I don't advocate to go around recruiters. I'm not one of those people that advocates for that, just because I wouldn't have liked it. But in a circumstance where, they've gone through a number of interviews with this person and the person has clearly flat out just ignored them or ghosted them, I think I would want to know, and I would be, that would have to, a very difficult conversation would have to follow.
I think that's the key, is that we need to try to get that connection back with that recruiter before we go up, over, and around. And if you've done everything that you can, then you look at other alternatives. Absolutely. Monica, what is your last piece of advice to people looking for work? As a recruiter looking for a recruiting role, who managed this entire recruiting process for hundreds of companies?
Truly, at this point, and what I've learned as I've been so blessed to have Lee in my professional life here the last few months, is just go with your gut and go with the vibe and the alignment that you feel with the people. The communication obviously has been so disjointed with the pandemic, so really just be consistent, trust in your guts, don't give up, and follow through is key. And again, kind of what Melissa had been sharing, just be honest and set boundaries and set expectations.
Okay, honesty and consistency. I'm going to put these words up here and hopefully wrap things up. We are going to approach this process with care, honesty, and consistency. And I think that if we focus on creating that, we will give exceptional experiences to candidates, to hiring managers, and the hiring process. So thank you all of you for joining me today. This is a very important topic, and expect more questions and comments to come, I'm sure, after this broadcast. Thank you all for joining us, and I will be talking to you guys soon. Thanks again for joining Live with Lily.
You guys are
Bye,
awesome. I'll drop you guys off a note on
Bye.
LinkedIn. Thank you for your wisdom.
If you guys can hang on the line for just a second.